In the previous lesson, we have created questions table to hold all questions for our application. Now in this lesson, we are going to pre-populate our tables with some fake data programmatically by combining model factories and database seed. Alright, before we moving on, let's head over to our terminal and then create new branch by saying git checkout -b, and then the branch name will be lesson 3. Oops, check out. Okay, now we are in lesson 3 branch and we're ready to go. Alright, let's go to database factories folder, and here we'll find user factory.php. If we open up this file, it contains factory definition. Factories are basically designed to allow us to quickly build out fake models, and they're often used for two purposes: testing and database seeding. If you remember, in the previous project, we utilized Eloquent or Query Builder. But now in this project, we'll utilize model factories. Okay, so this factory define needs two arguments. The first one is the model name, which in this case user model, and the second argument is callback that defines the data that goes in columns. The callback inject instance of Faker library, which you might already know, allows us to confidently generate various kinds of random data for testing and seeding purposes. And inside this callback, it returns an array consists of column with value pairs. So basically, here we can define which column will be filled with a certain value. We can fill the name with, let's say, John, like so. But of course, we need various names for different users, right? That's why we utilize Faker for name and email. Alright, here in this file, we could define a new factory definition for our question model, but I think it would be better to organize each single factory file for single model. So let's jump to our terminal and create new factory by typing php artisan make factory, and then the factory name will be question factory. Hit return. Now let's open the question factory and define factory definition for our question model. Here in the first parameter, let's change to question model. Inside the callback, let's change this empty array. Here, let's set the title column with random sentences. Faker sentences, sentence like so. And we'll have 5 to 10 sentences in this case. Run 5 to 10. And to remove the dot in the end, I'll wrap this in PHP our trim helper, our trim, and then specify a dot in the second argument. So let me show it to you. I'll open Tinker. And here I'll say use Faker factory. Then I'll create Faker instance. Faker equals factory create. Now if I generate sentence, you'll see it's always end with dot. Now I'll wrap this with our trim and pass dot here. Oops, our trim. And now the dot is no longer there, right? Okay. Next, let's set the body column with some paragraphs. Three to 7 paragraphs randomly. And because paragraphs will return value in array by default, so we need to pass through value in the second argument. This will convert it into string. So let me show you again. I'll go to Thinker, and here, if I type Faker paragraphs, you'll see it's in array. But when I pass, let's say 3, and pass through in the second argument, now it's in string and its paragraphs separated by new line. Okay? Now let's also set number of questions viewed. So views, and here let's make random number between 0 to 10. Let's do the same thing to answers and votes. So duplicate this line. And change to answers. Duplicate one more time. And change to votes. Here the votes can be negative, so let's change the first argument to, let's say, -3. Sorry, I miss comma here. Okay, I think that's all we need to do in this question factory. Now we can insert some records into our database using our defined factories by calling Laravel factory helper function. For now, let's try that in Thinker. And here we can call factory, specify the class name, let's say app user class, and the number of data that will be created is 3 in my case, closing the parentheses. And to actually create the user model, we need to end this with create method call. Hit return. Here we have 3 records as we defined in the second argument of factory helper calling. And here we also have 3 users with different name and email. So here we just passing user model in the first argument in factory helper function call instead of user factory, and Laravel will recognize that we want to generate some data that defined in user factory. Now, instead of calling the factory helper function in Thinker, let's put that in database seeder, so that we don't need to enter to Thinker whenever we want to generate or regenerate some data.